Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another episode of Total Breakdown. This is another fantastic competitive battle from the Prince's Pittance tournament hosted by Shetland Apache. The previous episode was Game 2, and this is the final in a best of 3 that currently sits at 1-all, pitting the Gobbo King's Dwarfs, perhaps picked ironically, against Argwylon led by Xiphos. Just want to point out that the Gobbo King does have a YouTube channel as well, and if you want to check him out, I've included a link in the description down below. We begin, as always, with talk of composition and deployment, and boy, do we have some interesting deployment going on here. So let's start with the Dwarfs. We've got a Dwarf Lord in the center here in charge, the Runesmith up front, able to provide that runic support wherever needed, and the Thane back here, able to push around the field and provide melee support wherever he is called. Then we've got these Vanguard deployed Bugman's Rangers, 3 of these guys up front, able to fire away from the start, and I think hoping to pressure the Wood Elves of Argwylon into giving chase, and these guys can fall behind this somewhat broken front line of Dwarf Warriors on either flank, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass in the center here, and then these Miners with Blasting Charges. And you'll notice in the center here, we do have a little bit of fire damage in melee and in range with the Blasting Charges, and that's in case there are any trees on the field. Then we also have the Ulthar's Raiders over here, and these guys I think are back here as opposed to Vanguard deployed up front, so they can fire away as the rest of the army falls back, and of course they can also reposition themselves against other angles of aggression. You'll notice most of the Dwarven layout seems a little haphazard, but there is a reason, I think. We've got these Longbeards with great weapons over here, Longbeards over here, and over here. We've also got these Dwarf Warriors back here protecting the Goblobber alongside these Slayers, again, able to dive in wherever needed to stop enemy large units. Now, I think the reason why it's so haphazard is because with the Wood Elves and Argwylon, there's always a threat of Vanguard deployment and funny angles of approach. So just taking a wide layout over here, trying to shield from all directions without just building a box. But you'll see, Argwylon, for the most part, has come in with a pretty straightforward deployment, pun not intended. You'll see we've got to the side here the Glade Lord atop the Forest Dragon in charge. Frontline consists of these 4 units of Eternal Guards with shields, and right behind them we've got these 3 units of Wildwood Rangers. You'll notice there are some giant gaps between each of these units here, and I think that's in anticipation of Dwarven artillery. If you keep some decent gaps, any collateral damage will be minimized from missed shots. We also have the Spellsinger of Life back here, able to provide support, keep these guys alive and fighting, and then on either flank, the War Dancers again. These guys are not armor-piercing, but they are anti-infantry, so they'll be able to circle around the enemy and hope for rear charges, or perhaps get into archers or artillery, or even better, slayers. But the best part of Argwylon's deployment, my absolute favorite part on the battlefield, in fact, is this pair of Way Watchers tucked away on the hill here, able to fire into the backs of the Dwarfs right from the start. So let's see how this all breaks down. Immediately, of course, both sets of ranged units begin to fire. And take a look at the difference in damage done here. These Bugman's Rangers fire away into the fronts of these Eternal Guards with shields. I want to say that's an uncontrolled shot. That's fire at will in action there, and it does very little damage. Meanwhile, take a look back here at what happens to the Goblobber as a pair of Way Watchers get that first volley in, more or less instantaneously dropping the Goblobbers. Their health goes down to half, and the morale goes down even lower, and you'll see the Bugman's Rangers have actually changed their target right away, instead focusing in on these War Dancers, and that's a great call. They have very little armor, they have no shields, so they're going to start falling apart as that range support comes in. Meanwhile, back here, of course, the Way Watchers continue to fire away, hoping to eliminate that artillery unit before it's able to get any work done. And you'll see in response, these Dwarf Warriors have to pull back. We've got these Longbeards with great weapons as well, pulling back as the rest of the Wood Elf army creeps forward, unhindered, uncontested. You'll see these War Dancers have nothing to worry about. The Dragon over here has nothing to worry about with the Glade Lord atop, and the front lines are just about to collapse. But as that's happening, you'll notice we have these Dwarfs again going up this hill over here. The Longbeards with great weapons as well, just going up this hill. They have to huff those dwarven legs. It's a long way up there. They're going to be tired climbing that steep hill, so great positioning there, just using this hill to stay protected from a head-on charge, not deploying anywhere where they can be engaged easily unless the dwarf saw it coming. So very well done there. And meanwhile, up front, we have these blasting charges coming in from the Miners, hoping to get a little bit of damage done into these Eternal Guards before those charges come through. But of course, I mean, it does a bit of damage, but not enough to stop their charge from coming in back here. Meanwhile, the Glade Lord pushes onwards, looking for an opportunity to dive in while the front lines do engage. And we're going to have some great engagements going on as those archers fall back. Bugman's Rangers get into some safe spaces here, trying to stay alive. But of course, they'll be all right in melee as well, for the most part. But of course, they're not going to be okay when we have Dragon's Breath coming in from the Forest Dragon. Take a look at how much hurt gets done here. These guys just start to disintegrate under all of that. I mean, it's not fire, but whatever it is, they get dropped down to about half health, and meanwhile, off in the distance here, you'll see these Weight Watchers firing away at the Bugman's Rangers as well. So now focusing on range as the Goblobber has been forced to break, while in the center here, you'll see we have Earthblood going down to try and keep the Wood Elves alive and fighting. We also have Awakening of the Wood going down. I don't think it's there to get any damage done, because it barely does, but more so to get some more health into these Wood Elf units. And again, you'll see back here, we've got the Dwarf Warriors still trying to get up that hill. They're still giving chase. These Weight Watchers have already used half of their ammunition. They've done a decent bit of damage to Bugman's Rangers over here as well, and they're just falling apart, Bugman's Rangers, because these are armor-piercing missiles. So great work there. And meanwhile, over here, you'll see we have the Slayers stuck in place with the Prey of Anathrema as the Glade Lord decides to dive in. Hit by Marked by Ulthar, though, so a bit of a dangerous position as all these Bugman's Rangers fire into enemy leadership, hoping to take her down, but the Slayers, I do feel bad for them, just seeing that massive dragon right in front of their eyes, but not able to do anything, not able to dive in and fulfill their duty. So I do feel bad for them, but look at the timing here. As the Prey of Anathrema falls off these Slayers, the Forest Dragon pushes through, carves a path, and tries to take to the air. And meanwhile, back here, as the Dwarfs are all engaged, we have these War Dancers able to carve their own path into the backs of these Slayers. Again, these guys are not armor-piercing, but they are anti-infantry, so as they push into the backs of these Slayers, they will start taking care of them pretty quickly, even though they are under fire from Bugman's Rangers right now. You'll see this unit of Bugman's Rangers has been taken care of, while the Goblobber now gets back to their equipment. They're back online, able to get some shots in and do a little bit of damage. And meanwhile, finally, the Dwarf Warriors have managed to close the gap to these Weight Watchers, but even then, a decent bit of micromanagement here is going to pull them into safety. So take a look at that. They pull away, barely taking any hurt, barely engaged in melee, and now they're firing at those Dwarf Warriors. Meanwhile, at the front lines over here, you'll see the Glade Lord safely in the air, Earthblood going down to keep these units alive. Meanwhile, the Runesmith is using Rune of Negation to try and stay alive as well, hoping to stay intact. We did have the Glade Lord using its well, I was going to say fiery breath, using its breath against Ulthar's Raiders, and once again, these guys have fallen apart, just absolutely melted under the use of that breath attack. So great use of the Dragon's Breath. Meanwhile, up on the hill here, you'll see continuous excellent micromanagement. We have the Longbeards with great weapons coming in as well, so a little bit of a sandwich going on there, but these guys are just going to split apart and just force the Dwarfs to have to pick a unit to engage and chase after. Meanwhile, over here, we do have another Awakening of the Wood going down. Again, I don't think it's there to actually cause some serious damage, but more so to keep the Wood Elves alive and fighting. And again, you'll see here the wonderful split, forcing the Dwarfs to give chase to one unit if they actually want to do anything effective here. But unfortunately, you'll see they're able to fire away. As the Weight Watchers retreat, they're able to fire away consistently and constantly, doing a decent amount of damage. And you'll see the Dwarfs are actually falling apart. These Dwarf Warriors are not having a good time. We've got these Longbeards over here able to beat on these Eternal Guards, but they will last for a decent while because of their high melee defense. And the Dwarf Lord in the center here looking for an opportunity to dive in, while the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass not having the best of days up front against these Wildwood Rangers, as well as the Eternal Guards with shields. Thane in there, though, doing a lot of work, and in comes the Dwarf Lord as well. A lot of damage being dealt there by the Dwarfs. Finally, it's going to turn in their favor, but Earthblood is trying to keep these guys alive, while back here you'll see once again Breath being used fantastically on Bugman's Rangers, hoping to shut down that range support. Wonderfully done. You want to eliminate any range support, but the Goblobber, you'll notice, has been online for a little while and finally is racking up some kills. Only 6 so far, but it is racking up some kills. And here Bugman's Rangers do get hit by the Prey of Anathrema, and in comes the Glade Lord atop that Forest Dragon, just trying to dish out the pain to those ranged units. Back here, meanwhile, these Weight Watchers, now having taken care of these Dwarf Warriors for the most part, are diving back into the main combat situation over here, not being picky enough with their ammo for a little while there, but I think now finally realizing they have to be a bit more selective, firing into the backs of the Goblobber and once again dropping those guys more or less instantaneously. Meanwhile, on the front line over here, you'll see we do have Ulthar's Raiders willing to fight again. They turn around and start throwing some of those axes into the backs of these Wood Elves, and they are now falling apart between the Thane, the Dwarf Lord, and the very effective axes of Ulthar's Raiders. A lot of damage done there, and the center, if we can call it that, is finally falling and going in favor of the Dwarfs. You'll see back here, meanwhile, the Glade Lord has taken care of the Bugman's Rangers as well, so well done there. And the Wildwood Rangers now diving in to provide some support to the Eternal Guard, while back here you'll see the Weight Watchers firing instead into the Bugman's Rangers back here, again, just to eliminate that range support. Wonderfully done, excellent use of ammunition there, and you'll see the Dwarf Warriors still, again, huffing those Dwarven legs, giving chase. Most unfortunate to see that happen. It's almost an insult, and we've got all these Dwarf Warriors who were retreating earlier now returning to the fray, looking for an opportunity to dive in and get involved. While up front over here, you'll see the Wildwood Rangers do get hit by Marked by Ulthar, reducing their armor significantly, putting them in a very dangerous spot. So they're going to start falling apart more or less instantaneously, while this right flank of the Dwarfs is in a bit of a tight spot as well, but they are Longbeards against some very low health units, so the Wood Elves, not the ideal situation for them there. You can see these War Dancers already giving up, willing to leave. They're wavering right now, very close to actually routing, and now these Way Watchers in a very tight spot as they are out of ammunition. They cannot use their armor-piercing capabilities anymore as they aren't armor-piercing in melee, so trying to pick off some low-health units, and that's not a bad call at all. Keep these Slayers engaged as the Gladelord is on the field here, trying to cause a little bit of damage here and there, try to eliminate these Longbeards with the help of the Gladelord. Tormentor Sword does go down, though, holding the Gladelord in place as the Thane and the Lord both dive in, and now the Gladelord is in a terrible situation. Morale dropping, health dropping, all that range support coming in as well. Wonderfully played there. You can see Ulthar's Raiders as well pushing in closer, I think, to try and toss some of those axes into the Gladelord, and the Gladelord, wavering, shaken, just barely manages to hold on to morale, gets out of that clump and takes to the air. So great management there, just barely getting out with her life. But of course, back here we still have some Bugman's Rangers alive and firing away, while over here you'll see these Bugman's Rangers have been engaged by the Eternal Guard with shields, and these guys are about to be engaged by the Wildwood Rangers. So good job trying to keep range support engaged at all times. Even back here, we've got the Spellsinger of Life more or less throwing her life away right into Ulthar's Raiders, just hoping that they're not able to fire. So great use of low health units and non-melee units for ideal purposes. I mean, of course, we do have these Way Watchers here engaging these Dwarf Warriors, maybe not the ideal spot for them, but the Dwarf Warriors are low on health, so they might still come out on top, or at least cause enough damage to force a mass rout. Over here, you'll see the Eternal Guard with the shields, unfortunately, do give up against the Bugman's Rangers, and back here, these Bugman's Rangers continue to fire away despite wavering. The Gladelord, though, up in the air, uses the Arrow of Kronos, fires into nothing, unfortunately, tries to hit, I think, this massive clump of Slayers and Longbeards with great weapons, but unfortunately just hits the hill instead, doing absolutely nothing. And over here, again, Bugman's Rangers now providing support to the other unit of Bugman's Rangers, trying to take care of the Wildwood Rangers, who, again, they don't have shields, and they have some armor, but not a lot, so they're not going to be in an ideal situation. Of course, morale is dropping as well, but the Gladelord does dive in to interrupt that range support and just toss these Bugman's Rangers around. And you'll see the Wood Elves now, because of that lacking range support, are just falling apart. These Way Watchers, of course, not doing well in melee, willing to give up already. We've got these Way Watchers here as well, getting some assistance from the Gladelord, but they're going to get fully surrounded. There's a bit of range support coming in as well, and they're not going to want to stick around despite the Gladelord being right there. And again, the Gladelord just looking for an opportunity to charge into something important, but you'll see all of that range support comes in. Again, a very terrifying situation for that Gladelord, trying to take to the air once more here, getting out of this clump situation, getting out of range from all of these units. Manages to scare this unit of Bugman's Rangers just by approaching, and then takes to the air again, now needing to find a safe space to be in, trying to take to the air, as you can see. And over here, all of these Wood Elf units are regrouping. They're trying to fall back and form up over here, get close, and that's a great call. I have to, again, restate, I said it in the last battle as well, reforming is something we don't see often enough. It's very helpful, especially when health is low and morale is low. Having secure flanks, having the leader nearby, these things can make a huge difference. But the Dwarves are in a situation where they can just charge into the Wood Elves, and if they can catch them, they'll have a great time. Unfortunately, that's the key problem here, catching them. And another Arrow of Kronos goes in, hitting the Warriors of Dragonfire pass? No, skimming past them, hitting the Slayers instead. Bad call there. Just one Slayer is all that's left, so a wasted Arrow of Kronos. Much better targeting this massive clump over here, perhaps, where there are some dense units and a decent bit of damage to be done to a Thane as well. So unfortunate use of an ability there, but the Gladelord now up in the air is using speed and, well, the fact that she's airborne to her advantage. We're going to skip it up by a notch here, as you'll see a little bit of harassment going on as these Wood Elves line up, and the Gladelord just fires away, looking for opportunities to get some damage in from a distance. The Wood Elves as well, constantly pulling back into some safety, staying out of range as the Gladelord continues to again fire away, maybe hoping to isolate a unit or two, maybe hoping to bait something out, give chase, and surround them individually, but that's going to be a very difficult call. The Dwarfs are moving forward in a very well-organized manner, not leaving anything to chance. You can see just pushing these guys off to the side as well. They are stalking off to the side, hoping to, I think, corner and surround these guys. The Dwarf Lord does get hit by the Gladelord, but the Gladelord is hit by, well, is marked by Ulthar, I should say. Reduced morale there. No missile parry, no missile resistance, though of course that's not making any difference as ammunition has been taken care of. Back here you'll see We do have all the Wood Elves finally charging into the Dwarfs, but they are severely outnumbered. And back here as well, the Glade Lord is in a terrible situation. The Lord would have been much better served being back here, providing some morale support to these guys, maybe getting some rear charges into some of these Dwarf units, but instead, a Pyrrhic victory for the Dwarfs. Now, great use of terrain right from the start in this one. Both armies pushing forward with Vanguard deployed range units, but the Wood Elves had the advantage of using that nearby hill to eliminate Dwarven artillery before they could do much work, following up with constant fire into ranged Dwarven units before then being micromanaged to avoid the incoming threat. This was an archer's game through and through, with ammunition determining movement, morale, and much more. The Wood Elves were off to a great start, but despite the early setbacks, the Dwarfs came out on top fantastically. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays. I do think it's one of the best ways to learn, and it's always great to highlight amazing battles from the community. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.